The hum was almost imperceptible, a low thrum of immense power tightly contained. Inside her newly constructed, heavily shielded research shed in the backyard of her suburban Oakcrest home, Dr. Simone Grant was meticulously calibrating a series of magnetic confinement coils. This unassuming structure housed a scaled-down, experimental stellarator, a key component in her privately funded, potentially world-changing research into clean, compact fusion energy. This was her sanctuary, her crucible of discovery. That sanctuary was breached with the jarring crash of metal against metal, followed by a chorus of angry, fearful shouts. Simone, startled, hit the emergency shutdown sequence for the stellarator, her heart pounding. She raced to the reinforced door just as it buckled inwards under the assault of a crowbar wielded by a large, thuggish man. Behind him stood Mr. Frank Garrison, the red-faced, belligerent president of the Oakcrest Homeowners Association, and a small, agitated crowd of neighbors. "What in the name of God are you doing?" Simone yelled, her voice cutting through the din. "This is a secure research facility. You are trespassing and destroying private property." Frank Garrison, his eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and self-righteous fury, pointed a trembling finger at her. "A research facility, Grant? Or a ticking time bomb? A dangerous, unpermitted nuclear experiment lab right here in our family neighborhood. We've had reports. Strange lights, weird humming noises, electrical surges. You're endangering our children, our homes. This death trap is coming down today." "Nuclear experiment." Simone stared at him, aghast. "This is a contained plasma physics experiment for clean energy research. It's perfectly safe. I have every permit, every safety certification. The humming is the magnetic coils. The lights are diagnostic lasers. You have no idea what you're talking about." "Oh, we know exactly what we're dealing with," Frank spat, his voice amplified by a megaphone that suddenly appeared in his hand. "We're dealing with a mad woman, a reckless endangerer. Attention Oak Crest residents," he boomed, turning to the frightened, easily swayed crowd. "Your HOA is taking decisive action to neutralize the imminent threat posed by the illegal and highly dangerous sciences experiments being conducted by Miss Simone Grant. She is putting us all at risk with her crazy radioactive contraptions. She's probably building a bomb in that shed." "Radioactive? A bomb?" Simone felt a wave of horrified disbelief. The ignorance was so profound, so dangerous. "This is fusion research. It produces no long-lived radioactive waste. It's the future of clean energy. The equipment you are attacking is worth millions, part of a $20 million research initiative." "Millions for her crazy death machine," a neighbor shrieked, a woman whose child had been told by Frank that Simone's shed could make them glow in the dark. "Frank's right. Tear it down before she kills us all." Another neighbor, emboldened, hurled a rock that smashed against the shed's reinforced observation window, thankfully not breaking through the specialized polyalloy. The crowd was becoming a mob. "This is lunacy," Simone cried, trying to shield the damaged section of the door. "You are destroying vital research. You are acting out of baseless fear and prejudice." "Baseless?" Frank sneered, clearly enjoying his power over the terrified crowd. He had an associate filming the entire confrontation with a smartphone. "We have evidence, Ms. Grant. Evidence of your reckless endangerment. And this," he produced a pre-printed HOA violation notice, "is your official notification for constructing and operating an unpermitted, hazardous industrial facility in a residential zone, for creating a clear and present danger to the community, and for refusing HOA safety inspections. You are hereby fined $20,000. And this shed will be dismantled, by force if necessary, starting now." He gestured to his hired goons, who raised their crowbars and a sledgehammer. "Stop!" Simone yelled, positioning herself in front of the damaged door. "You touch that equipment again, and I will ensure every single one of you faces federal charges for destruction of government-affiliated research property and reckless endangerment." The mention of federal charges gave the goons a moment's pause, but Frank, now fully in his role as the town savior, was undeterred. "More threats from the mad scientist. She's clearly desperate. Don't listen to her, boys. Protect your families. Take it down. The video naturally was a viral sensation on local social media within an hour, titled Oakcrest HOA Confronts Mad Scientist in Her Backyard Nuke Lab. It was expertly edited to make Simone look unhinged and threatening, and Frank the calm, heroic leader. The comments were a firestorm of fear, racism, and calls for Simone's immediate arrest and the decontamination of her property. Dr. Simone Grant, a leading theoretical physicist whose quiet work on controlled nuclear fusion was considered by her peers to be on the cusp of a Nobel-worthy breakthrough, found herself physically defending her life's work from an ignorant, hate-filled mob led by a petty tyrant. Her multi-million-dollar experimental stellarator, a beacon of hope for a clean energy future, was being called a death trap. The injustice was a palpable, sickening weight. But as she stood her ground, her eyes blazing with a physicist's unwavering conviction in facts and a citizen's fury at lawlessness, a cold, hard resolve settled within her. Frank Garrison thought he was dismantling a shed. He had no idea he was about to trigger a meltdown of his own making, one that would bring the full force of scientific truth and federal law down upon his head. He had dared to interfere with the fundamental forces of nature. He was about to experience the fundamental force of justice. The initial assault on her laboratory and the ludicrous $20,000 fine were, for Dr. Simone Grant, not merely acts of vandalism and extortion. They were declarations of war against scientific progress itself. While Frank Garrison was preening before his HOA board, boasting of his decisive action against the neighborhood madwoman and her dangerous contraptions, Simone was in emergency lockdown mode, both physically and digitally. Her first priority was to assess the damage to the stellarator's external diagnostic sensors and to secure her terabytes of irreplaceable experimental data onto encrypted off-site Department of Energy (DOE) servers. Her legal team, a formidable group specializing in federal research grants, intellectual property, and national security protocols related to advanced energy projects, immediately fired off a blistering cease and desist order to Frank Garrison and the entire Oakcrest HOA board. The letter unequivocally identified the lab shed as a secure facility housing a federally significant, privately funded advanced physics research project into compact fusion energy, detailed the millions of dollars in custom-built equipment, and warned that any further attempts to interfere, trespass, vandalize, or slander Dr. Grant or her research would result in immediate federal intervention, catastrophic civil liabilities, and potential criminal charges carrying severe penalties. Frank Garrison received this letter, glanced at the DOE and National Science Foundation grants referenced, without understanding their significance, and promptly declared it more psychobabble from the crazy bomb lady. He waved it dismissively at an emergency HOA safety first rally he convened on the community green. "She's trying to scare us with fake government connections and big fancy words, folks," he bellowed into his megaphone. "But we, the good, decent, hardworking taxpayers of Oakcrest, will not be intimidated by some mad scientist and her terrorist threats. That shed is a clear and present danger, and it will come down." His safety-first initiative devolved into a relentless campaign of psychological warfare. Frank, now utterly convinced he was a local hero battling a diabolical supervillain, organized 24/7 neighborhood watch patrols around Simone's property. These patrols, consisting of his most fervent and least intelligent supporters, armed with flashlights, air horns, and a misplaced sense of civic duty, would loiter near her fence line, shouting taunts, making loud, disruptive noises at all hours to rattle the crazy woman and report any perceived activity from the shed. Mrs. Henderson, now self-appointed chief hazard monitor, would meticulously log every time Simone's security lights came on, every faint hum from the shed's ventilation, which she described as the sound of the death machine powering up, and every delivery, no matter how innocuous. The online slander escalated to new depths of lunacy. Frank, or his anonymous proxies, began posting leaked schematics of Simone's bomb, actually a crudely drawn caricature of a nuclear cooling tower with skulls and crossbones. and eyewitness accounts of green glowing mists and strange electrical sparks emanating from the shed at night. They even started a petition to have the entire street evacuated due to the imminent radiological threat. The fear, deliberately stoked and amplified, began to take a serious toll on the community's rationality. How could such dangerous misinformation be allowed to fester and spread, all because of one man's ego and ignorance? Simone, meanwhile, was in a desperate race against time. The damage to her external sensors had compromised the integrity of her current experimental run. She needed to recalibrate delicate magnetic fields and repair damaged vacuum seals, all while under siege. She had her team at her university lab, where she held a tenured professorship and directed the advanced physics program, working on contingency plans, but moving the core components of the stellarator was a monumental and incredibly expensive undertaking, not to mention the lost research time. The hints of her true status, the sheer scale and importance of her work, continued to be tragically, comically misunderstood by Frank in his echo chamber. One afternoon, a convoy of 3 black Suburbans with U.S. government plates and a lead vehicle with flashing but silent emergency lights discreetly pulled up to Simone's house. Out stepped several serious-looking men and women in dark suits, along with 2 uniformed officers from the Department of Energy's Office of Nuclear Security. This was a pre-scheduled, high-level DOE program review and security assessment team. Their visit made urgent by Simone's reports of local harassment. They were there to inspect her facility's enhanced security protocols and discuss the next phase of her $20 million grant. Mrs. Henderson, observing from behind her twitching curtains, nearly fainted. "Frank! Frank! It's the men in black! They're here! With guns! It's a full federal raid! She's finally being taken down! You were right all along! She's a super spy, or worse!" Frank, initially ecstatic, rushed to the scene, hoping to assist the federal authorities in apprehending the dangerous scientist. He was met by a stone-faced DOE security chief who, after glancing at Frank's HOA ID badge with visible disdain, curtly informed him that this was a classified federal matter and that he and his local vigilantes were to remain at least 500 feet away from Dr. Grant's property line or face immediate arrest for interfering with federal agents. Frank, sputtering and indignant, but also suddenly terrified by the sheer, no-nonsense authority confronting him, retreated, his confidence momentarily shaken, but his paranoia only deepening. "See," he later told his board, "it's a cover-up. They're all in on it. She's too dangerous for them to arrest publicly. They're probably going to spirit her away to some secret government lab to build more bombs." Simone, during a brief, tense exchange with Frank at her gate, where he was demanding to know why his neighborhood was being invaded by spooks, tried one last time to explain, in the simplest possible terms. "Mr. Garrison, the work I do here is related to creating a safe, limitless source of clean energy for the future of this planet. It is of vital national importance. The equipment is incredibly sensitive and, yes, expensive. Your actions are not just harassing me, they are jeopardizing years of critical research." Frank just stared at her, his eyes narrowed. "Clean energy? Don't give me that tree-hugger nonsense. I know what you're doing in there. You're building something to control us all, some kind of mind control ray powered by your nuclear doohickeys. I've read about it on the internet." The sheer, unadulterated ignorance was breathtaking. Simone realized then that reasoning with Frank Garrison was like trying to explain quantum mechanics to a rock. He was impervious to facts, insulated by his own self-importance and a deep-seated fear of anything he didn't understand. The HOA, under Frank's increasingly desperate and erratic leadership, formally contracted a local demolition company, a crew known for their willingness to cut corners and ask few questions, to forcibly abate the hazardous structure at 12 Willow Creek Lane. If Simone did not pay the now escalated $50,000 in fines and safety remediation fees, and voluntarily dismantle her lab shed within 48 hours. The notice was delivered by a thuggish process server who also informed her that the HOA was placing an immediate lien on her property. Simone knew this was Frank's endgame. He was going to try and physically destroy her life's work. Her legal team had already filed for an emergency injunction in federal court, but the hearing wasn't scheduled until the following week. Frank was clearly trying to act before the courts could intervene. She spent the next 48 hours in a whirlwind of activity, not dismantling her lab, but fortifying it. She also arranged for a different kind of arrival. She made a series of secure calls to the head of her university's physics department, to several Nobel laureate colleagues from around the world who were familiar with her research, to the Public Affairs Office of the Department of Energy, and to a few select, highly respected science journalists from national publications. As the 48-hour deadline approached, Frank Garrison was practically vibrating with anticipation. He had alerted the local news, the same ones who had previously filmed his heroic stand, and invited the entire neighborhood to witness the takedown of the mad scientist's lair. He had even arranged for a celebratory barbecue afterwards. He envisioned himself on the evening news, the brave HOA president who saved his community from a terrible threat. Early on the morning of the planned demolition, a large, ominous-looking bulldozer and a crew of rough-looking demolition workers rumbled to a halt in front of Simone's house. Frank Garrison, wearing a brand-new, bright yellow hard hat, stepped forward, megaphone in hand. A crowd of neighbors, a mix of the fearful, the morbidly curious, and Frank's gleeful supporters, had gathered. "Dr. Simone Grant," Frank's voice boomed, amplified and distorted. "Your time is up. You have failed to comply with the lawful orders of the Oak Crest Homeowners Association. For the safety and well-being of this community, we will now commence with the emergency demolition of this unpermitted, hazardous, and illegal structure. Men, prepare to advance." The bulldozer engine roared to life. The crowd gasped. This was it, the moment of truth. Frank raised his hand, ready to give the signal to destroy millions of dollars of groundbreaking scientific research. But just as his hand was about to drop, a convoy of vehicles turned onto Sycamore Lane. Not just one or two, but a procession. Leading the way were several official-looking black sedans with government plates. Following them were vans from every major national news network and several international science journals. And emerging from the lead sedan was not a demolition supervisor, but Dr. Simone Grant herself, dressed not in lab gear, but in an impeccably tailored suit, an air of absolute, unshakable authority about her. And she was not alone. Walking beside her was a distinguished group of individuals, world-renowned physicists, university deans, and a very stern-looking official from the U.S. Department of Energy. Simone was also holding a small, very official-looking device in her hand. Not a weapon, but something that looked like a high-tech presentation remote. Frank Garrison's demolition party was about to be spectacularly, definitively crashed. The massive bulldozer idled, its steel blade inches from the wall of Dr. Simone Grant's unassuming lab shed. Frank Garrison, resplendent in his ridiculous yellow hard hat, raised his hand dramatically, ready to give the signal to his demolition crew. The small crowd of his HOA supporters held their breath, a mixture of fear and vindictive excitement on their faces. Mrs. Henderson was already live-streaming the heroic demolition of the neighborhood death lab to the HOA's Facebook page. "This is your final chance, Grant," Frank bellowed through his megaphone, savoring his moment. "Surrender your illegal facility or face the consequences for the safety of Oak Crest." Just as his hand began to drop, a calm, amplified voice cut through the tension. "Mr. Frank Garrison, stand down your crew immediately." All heads turned. Dr. Simone Grant stood on her porch, no longer the harassed resident, but a figure of immense, quiet authority. She was dressed in a sharp, dark pantsuit. Beside her stood three equally imposing individuals. A distinguished older man with a Department of Energy ID badge clearly visible, a woman with the no-nonsense air of a federal lawyer, and a uniformed DOE security captain. In Simone's hand was a small, powerful remote, and behind her, on a rapidly deployed portable projection screen, an image was already forming. Frank, momentarily startled by her entourage, quickly recovered his bluster. "And who are these eggheads, Grant? Your so-called scientific delegation come to cry with you? They can't stop progress. They can't stop me from protecting this community. Men, proceed." "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Mr. Garrison." The man with the DOE badge said, his voice like granite. You are currently attempting to destroy a multi-million-dollar research asset critical to United States national energy security. That is a federal offense. Simone clicked the remote. The screen behind her blazed to life with a dynamic, professionally produced video. It showed breathtaking animations of controlled nuclear fusion, the interior of a highly sophisticated laboratory, clearly the interior of her shed before the damage, and then Simone herself addressing a packed auditorium at an international energy summit with Dr. Simone Grant, Director, Project Chimera, U.S. Department of Energy lead investigator. On the screen below her, the video detailed the $20 million federally and privately funded Project Chimera, its goal to achieve sustainable compact fusion power, and its potential to revolutionize global energy. My name, Simone stated, her voice now amplified by a discreet lapel microphone, perfectly synced with her image on screen, is Dr. Simone Grant. I am a theoretical and experimental physicist. I am indeed the director of Project Chimera, a top priority clean energy initiative. The dangerous workshop you have repeatedly slandered and attacked, Mr. Garrison, the ticking time bomb you have incited this community to fear, is in fact a secure, state-of-the-art experimental stellarator facility dedicated to achieving controlled nuclear fusion, the safest, cleanest, and most powerful potential energy source known to humanity. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The demolition crew had shut down their engines, their faces a mixture of awe and terror. Frank Garrison's jaw had dropped, his face draining of all color, his hard hat askew. He looked from the screen to Simone, to the stern DOE officials, his small world imploding. The equipment your vandals previously damaged, and which you now seek to obliterate with that bulldozer, Simone continued, her eyes boring into Frank's, represents years of irreplaceable research, custom fabricated components sourced from national laboratories across the globe, and the dedicated work of dozens of brilliant scientists and engineers. Its destruction would not only be a catastrophic loss to science, but a direct act of sabotage against a project of vital national interest. The DOE official, Assistant Secretary Dr. Alistair Finch, stepped forward. Mr. Frank Garrison, he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Doctor, Grant's project is conducted under direct oversight and partial funding from the United States Department of Energy. Your HOA's repeated documented attempts to harass Dr. Grant, vandalize her research facility, incite public panic with baseless accusations, and now this attempt at forcible destruction constitute multiple serious federal offenses. We have been monitoring this situation with grave concern. As Dr. Finch spoke, several more dark government vehicles, which had been waiting discreetly down the street, pulled up. Armed Department of Energy security police and FBI agents emerge, moving with swift, professional precision. Frank Garrison, the lead DOE security captain, announced, his voice ringing with authority as he approached the trembling HOA president. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit destruction of government interest property, willful interference with a federally significant scientific research project, making false and malicious reports to incite public panic, and multiple violations of federal codes pertaining to the security of advanced energy research facilities. Frank let out a strangled yelp of terror. No, it's a mistake. I was just protecting the children. That shed, it looked dangerous. Nobody told me it was nuclear, he babbled as the agents efficiently handcuffed him. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. His supporters in the crowd were either frozen in horror or trying to discreetly film the arrest on their phones. Their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning realization of their own foolish complicity. Nuclear fusion? One neighbor whispered, aghast. She's a top government physicist? Frank, you absolute monumental idiot. You've ruined us all. Dr. Simone Grant then addressed the stunned community and the now very interested and rapidly arriving legitimate news crews who had been alerted by the DOE's Public Affairs Office. The pursuit of scientific knowledge, especially knowledge that holds the key to a sustainable future for our planet, is a sacred trust, she said, her voice firm but filled with a quiet passion. It requires dedication, rigor, and a commitment to truth. It should never be threatened by ignorance, fear, or petty abuses of power. Project Chimera will continue. Its light will not be extinguished by baseless accusations or acts of vandalism. For justice, like the energy we seek to harness, is indeed the most powerful force in the universe. The legal and public annihilation of Frank Garrison and the Oak Crest HOA was swift and total. Frank was convicted on multiple federal charges and sentenced to a significant prison term. His life and reputation destroyed. The HOA was sued into oblivion by both Dr. Grant and the Department of Energy for the $6 million damage to the research project, plus massive punitive fines. It was dissolved by federal court order, its name becoming a national punchline for ignorant overreach. The slanderous videos Frank had posted were now key evidence against him, viewed by over 50 million people worldwide as a stark warning. Dr. Simone Grant, with an emergency infusion of federal funds and an outpouring of support from the international scientific community, not only rebuilt but expanded Project Chimera. Within a few years, her team achieved a major breakthrough in sustainable fusion ignition, a development that promised to change the world. She also established the Grant Institute for Advanced Energy Physics, a world-leading research and educational center dedicated to fostering the next generation of clean energy scientists and promoting public understanding of complex science. Its charter pointedly barred any individual with a history of obstructing scientific research or promoting anti-intellectual agendas from any affiliation. She went on to receive numerous international awards, including the prestigious Enrico Fermi Award for her contributions to physics and energy science. The final, uniquely fitting scene, years later. Frank Garrison, gaunt and broken after his release from federal prison, is working a grueling, low-wage job at an old polluting coal-fired power plant. He's shoveling coal into a roaring furnace, his face and clothes black with soot, the air thick with acrid smoke. He's sweating profusely, coughing, a picture of miserable, anachronistic toil. On a small, grimy television in the plant's break room, a news report is highlighting Dr. Simone Grant, who is addressing the United Nations Climate Summit, looking radiant and powerful. The future of our planet, Dr. Grant is saying, her voice inspiring millions, depends not on clinging to the polluting energies of the past, but on courageously embracing the clean, limitless power of the future, a future powered by ingenuity, by collaboration, and by an unshakable faith in science. We must never allow fear or ignorance to destroy that future before it even has a chance to ignite. The camera pulls back from Frank's soot-stained, despairing face as he stares at the screen, then soars over the gleaming, futuristic campus of the Grant Institute, where a contained fusion reaction is symbolically depicted as a clean, bright star. An illuminated sign above the entrance reads, "The Grant Institute, Energetic Justice." The imagined audience would be erupting in cheers. That's what you call a scientific smackdown. Frank's new job? Powering down his own stupidity? Dr. Grant just achieved karma fusion. The victory was not just Simone's, it was a triumph for science, for the future, and for a truly powerful form of justice.